Welcome to Rooted and Ready, a podcast from Annie's Project, where we have conversations designed to help women in agriculture build the knowledge, confidence, and connections they need to navigate both the business of farming and the realities of farm life. Today, we're revisiting a conversation about resilience, but also about something that often gets left out when we talk about being resilient, knowing when to ask for help and knowing where to find it. My guest, Carey Portell, is a Missouri cattle producer, author, speaker, and advocate whose life changed dramatically after a head-on collision with a drunk driver in 2010. Her injuries required years of surgeries and rehabilitation and permanently changed the way she lives and works on her farm. One important part of Carey's journey was discovering Agribility. Agribility is an organization that helps farmers, ranchers, agricultural workers, and their families who are living with disabilities, injuries, or long-term health conditions find ways to continue working in agriculture more safely and productively. That might mean identifying adaptive equipment, modifying the way a farm task is completed, improving accessibility, or connecting someone with additional resources and services. For Carey, Missouri Agribility helped her find practical solutions that allowed her to continue working with cattle while reducing her risk of falls, injuries, and fatigue. Those adaptations included equipment such as a UTV with an automatic feeder and remote control pasture gates. And I think that adds another dimension to our conversation about resilience. Resilience doesn't mean doing everything yourself. Sometimes resilience means changing how you do the work. Sometimes it means using a different piece of equipment. Sometimes it means accepting that your body has different limits than it once did. And sometimes it simply means being willing to say, I need some help figuring this out. Whether you're dealing with an injury, disability, chronic health condition, the effects of aging, or simply wondering how you can make farm work safer and more manageable, I hope this conversation encourages you to look for the resources that can help you continue doing the work that matters to you. Here's my conversation with Carey Portell. Welcome, Carey.
All right, thank you. Thanks for having me here today.
I'm so excited to have you join us. I have been a follower of yours for many years. I've heard you speak before, I've read your book, and you have such a powerful journey to share with us.
Yeah.
So,
One that I never thought that I would have to, live through and then actually share with others.
yeah. We'll start at the very beginning. And Carrie, as you know, as talked about your powerful journey, you really have an incredible story of resilience to share. Can you take us back to your life before your accident? What did farming look like for you then?
Yeah, thinking back before my car crash, like I had zero limitations. Like I was so physical. Like my entire life was physical at that point that when I did have my car crash, it was a screaming halt to my life, and that part was very difficult because I was a full-time portrait photographer, and then like just a couple months before my car crash happened, I had transitioned back into the medical field. I was an X-ray and an MRI tech, which both of those career choices are physical. And then we had our farm. So we had a cattle farm, a beef cattle farm, and then we also had a lot of horses. So we raised and trained horses. My husband was into team roping. So everything was just outdoors
Mm-hmm.
and physical. And with four kids, at the time of my car crash, I think they were ages 8 to 13. So it's very, very busy. And I always tell everybody, I'm like, I do not joke. I never sat down until it was time for bed. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
just nonstop chaos. And I remember just constantly thinking, Carrie, you've got to figure out how to slow down and just pay attention more. Like all these great things are happening, but you're not getting to sit and just kind of bask in the accomplishment or the appreciation of
Mm-hmm.
what's going on around you. And it's almost like, a higher source said, okay, if you're not going to stop yourself, Carrie, I'm going to do it for you. And then boom, it happened.
So, after your accident, what were some of those early days and months like, both physically and mentally?
Yeah, pure hell. I mean,
Hmm.
that's what I can say. Like it was the only thing you can do is try to exist so that at one day you can feel like you're actually surviving so that then at some point in the future you can feel like you're living again. Because it
Hmm.
was I came home and I was in a hospital bed in the middle of my living room for I think 4 months. So that was pretty difficult,
Hmm.
having zero privacy and then everybody living around you and you're still stuck, in that hospital bed. But I couldn't move for months because it was just constant healing. And I think within like the first 6 months, I might have had like I think four or five surgeries in that first 6 months. It was pretty crazy, but it was just unfortunately life revolved around me at that point and it was so uncomfortable and foreign to
Hmm.
me as a mom, with four kids and then all the other things that we had going on that I didn't like it. I
Hmm.
didn't like having to be waited on, people bringing me my food or my medicine or things like that. I actually had to have a babysitter for I think the
Hmm.
first 8 weeks, just to make sure that I was taken care of at all
Hmm.
times. And it was that first year was an extraordinary experience. And it goes both ways. It was very difficult and frustrating, but then also the lessons that I learned that first year of just how resilient I could be
Hmm.
um, was pretty astonishing. Like there were some days where I'm like, I'm not gonna make it. Like I'm not gonna make it. And I have been so fortunate to have a husband at home who is a natural coach, and he coached me through those moments so that I could get to the better ones.
Just when you were talking about the pre-accident, just how busy your life was, how you were on the go so much, and then all of a sudden you moved to basically it's a dramatic stop, standstill. So that is such a huge mental curve that you're trying to work through in that as well. Can you share a moment when your mindset began to shift from survival, just getting through the day, to actually
Yeah.
rebuilding and maybe even acceptance, like this is where my life is now, and I need to, look at, um, I hate to use the term making lemons out of lemonade, but how do you make the best out of it as
Yeah.
you move forward?
I love that you asked that question because nobody's actually ever asked me that before. And I used to tell everybody, I'm like, man, you guys are seeing the physical problems that I'm going
Hmm.
through, the physical challenges, but they didn't understand everything that was going on inside of me. And I think that was every bit as difficult as just healing my physical injuries. And it was a year, and it was, I had so many physicians and my physical therapist talking to me during that whole first year saying, I promise you it will get better. I know
Hmm.
right now is really tough. And one of my surgeons told me, they're like, Carey, you are actually grieving a death. You are grieving the
Mm.
death of your old life, your old body. You're grieving the death of the man who hit you, and there's a lot going on. So this is basically like a grieving process. And they do always say when you lose a loved one, like it's almost at that year mark where you finally get to start like opening up again and feel
Hmm.
like, hey, I might actually get to live and feel okay inside. And that is exactly what happened to me. Because the entire first year, I kept telling my husband, I feel like I'm in this tornado and I just want it to stop. Like,
Mm.
if I'm not ever going to walk again, I just want to know. Like, can I
Hmm.
just have that acceptance so that I can move on from, hey, I'm going to continue to try to walk? And it was just all these surgeries to try to get me there. And
Hmm.
it was definitely at that year mark that all of a sudden I woke up and I felt some of the heaviness from my chest kind of dissipate. And I thought, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to be okay. Like,
Mm.
regardless of whatever happens in my future, whether I can or can't walk, whether I'm always going to be in this amount of pain or not, no matter what, I'm going to be okay.
Mm.
And I don't know how to tell people to get there. It's something that I just had to continue working through on a daily basis until I finally got to that point.
You've talked about how your mind is still ambitious, and you know, through some of your speaking engagements and in your book, and you've done so much, had so many surgeries, you've worked so hard to get to the point where you are at now, but you do still have some limitations. How do you navigate that tension within yourself?
It's most days I do okay with it now. There's a few times a year that I get really frustrated, but
Hmm.
it is like you have to learn how to accept. So when I see something that I used to be able to do, I sit back and I go, okay, Carrie, how do you think you're going to be able to do this?
Hmm.
And I will think through it. I will do trial and error. I can't use my body like I used to be because that's my old body. I have a new body now, so I have to understand my limitations. And Missouri agribility helped me a lot with understanding my new limitations. But it's a creative thing that I have to figure out how to do. And
Hmm.
now, like patience, ooh, that was my first lesson was patience, and I was not very good at it because like when I decide I'm going to do something, I'm like, okay, let's get to it, and I
Hmm.
couldn't do that for a really long time. So there are some times now with farming that I'm like, okay, you know what, that is something that I don't think I'm ever going to be able to do again because I have tried and failed so many times. And then it becomes a safety issue. Like if I can't figure out how to do it in a safe manner,
Hmm.
all right, I'm going to have to ask my husband to, and just say, hey, you know what, this is not going to work for me anymore. I can't do this. And one of those things is just recently, I finally had to give up pouring out range cubes for my cows. Because we had to take the cake feeder off of my Ranger when we have to do it by buckets. Well, that doesn't work for me anymore.
Hmm.
I keep losing my steps and I'm not fast.
Hmm.
So when you feel that breath on your neck of those
Mm.
cows and they're running to their cake, they love that
Yeah.
stuff, you know. I've had two close calls and I
Hmm.
am like, I cannot do this anymore. I just
Hmm.
know it. So in the beginning, I was really frustrated because I didn't have any limitations. And I was like, God, I should be able to do this. You know, I'm this age.
Hmm.
And, you know, I have to remind myself, Carrie, you don't have the physical capacity like you do
Hmm.
anymore. And it brings up a great point that I just turned 50, and this was started when I was age 35. I completely understand what it's like to be in the mind of an
Hmm.
elderly person because their mind still says that they can do anything that they want to do.
Hmm.
They are still ambitious, but their body just won't keep up anymore.
Hmm.
And I'm like, that's been me since I was 35 years old. And I understand their frustration and why they get aggravated some days. And, you know, people say, oh my gosh, that grumpy old man. Well,
Hmm.
I get it. I understand because all this stuff that has been going on their entire life that they've had zero problems with, ooh, all of a sudden that's taken away.
Hmm. That is such a great point, Carrie. As you're talking, it reminded me of my father-in-law because he is in his 80s now, and he'd farmed, all of his life, and he has struggled with limitations to his mobility now, and he's said, in my mind, I feel like I should be able to do it. But my body, I just can't do it anymore. And so that's been really hard to watch, watch him not be able to be as active anymore. But you also bring up a great kind of suggestion or reminder for all of us is to be patient. If you have an elderly parent or maybe family member that's still wanting to be involved in the farm, and you're like, oh gosh, they're kind of getting in the way. I'm worried about them hurting themselves, or to just kind of, that's a reminder to be patient with them, and also understanding that they are going through that where they, in their mind, they think they can, but their body
Yeah.
is just kind of letting them down.
Yeah, definitely.
So you've talked about this a little bit, but what were some other big challenges that you had returning to the farm? And you mentioned Missouri agribility, but maybe you can speak to that a little bit more as how that kind of helped you adapt your operation and some of the things that you did.
Yeah, when I first started getting back on the farm, it was Like I needed something so badly because I was just so used to contributing and having this task list every day that it was driving me crazy not to be able to do the things that I wanted to do. And being an outside person, it was really difficult for me not to be out there in nature or with our livestock. And I struggled really bad. And I cannot remember who sent me the link, but MU had a conference called Pearls of Production.
Hmm.
And they said, hey, you know what? This might be good for you. And they knew mentally what I was going through. And they were thinking, hey, maybe this would be good for her just on a spiritual level, like get my spirits up and
Hmm.
get my mind back and, be with other women who are farming. And that was like a complete pivot in my entire farming life was going to that conference. And that's where I got introduced to Missouri Agribility. And when I called him, I said, I know I have this new body and I think that I'm being creative, but I'm still struggling so bad. And
Hmm.
I'm getting so frustrated. And the first thing that they talked to me about was using different body mechanics. Like I can't lift a 50-pound bag of mineral off of the ground anymore, but I can do it if it's at waist level. So it was little things like that that should be so obvious, but when you're so used to doing it, the same way you've been doing it for 35 years, you don't think about that.
Hmm.
And then it was, different kinds of equipment to trying to figure out how to get me to do this because, a lot of people when I do present to ag audiences, they're like, why don't you just have your husband do this? Why put yourself through this? And I'm like, I need something because I have tried and failed 3 times to go back to a normal job where you leave your house every day and go do that. My pain level will not allow me to do
Hmm.
it. And I know people are like, but farming, it's so physical. But my physical therapist is the one who actually suggested that I do it because I was going to physical therapy 3 times a week. And he's like, here, you've got a farm. Let's try to figure out some very trivial chores that you can
Hmm.
do during the day that will actually substitute for your physical therapy, but will help you do some farm chores, but also help with all of this, stuff that's going on inside of you that you're searching for and you can't figure out how to do it. So it's been a lot of help from Agribility, my physical therapist, and then just trial and error, trying to figure out, okay, I couldn't do this last year, but maybe I can try again this year. Maybe
Hmm.
things have changed a little bit, and that's just basically how I've been going about it every day.
And I think for those of us that live on a farm, but also I think for anyone, nature is healing, and just being outside and being active, and if you have animals, interacting with your animals. So it makes total sense to me
Yeah.
as why you would want to do that, or why your physical therapist even suggested that, because I think just being able to get out and interact with your animals, do those simple chores that whatever that you are capable of doing. And I know that has increased as you have, as
Yeah.
your recovery has increased over the years. But I think that would resonates with a lot of folks. Just being able, instead of going to an office every day, just being able to get outside.
Yeah.
And it's awesome to hear that that agribility program here in Missouri has been so helpful to you in making those adaptations that you need. Can you let our listeners know, because we have listeners from across the country, is agribility, is that something that's available in every state?
It's not available in every state because it is state funded, but
Okay.
there are, if you go onto the National Agribility site, there's a map of the United States that will show each state that does have agribility,
Hmm.
and but then there's other states that are affiliates. So if
Okay.
there's a state right next door that can be an affiliate, that will happen. But there are the states that aren't funded for agribility, they always give resources to other organizations, such as, Annie's Project, to say,
Hmm.
okay, we don't have agribility, but we do have Annie's Project, or there's a certain veterans program, maybe, or something in
Hmm.
that state. So they're really great about, hey, if we don't have something, hold up, we're not gonna leave you hanging. Let's find something for you. So they're just so passionate about what they do, and they just go that extra step for people in agriculture that I wish every single state could be funded with them.
It's I completely agree with you. And I've besides yourself, I have known others that have used Missouri Agribility here in the state, and I can't say enough good things about them. If someone was wanting to check out, if that's available in their state, is what is the website, or how could they find the National Agribility?
Yeah, I think that's just all you have to type in is National Agribility Project, and then it will bring up all the states that do have funding.
Okay.
It'll bring up the affiliates, and it'll have that big map on there, which that's the easiest way for me is
Mm-hmm.
to just, I'm a visual
Right.
person anyway,
Yes.
is just to be able to look on there. And then it will have the contact information for your state. But if something like if you just can't find what you're looking for, you can just contact the National Agribility and they will absolutely help you to get, some help for yourself or I guess a loved one maybe.
You've spoke a lot about the mental load that women in agriculture carry. What do you want other women farmers to hear?
I guess the very first thing is you can do it.
Hmm.
Like we second guess ourselves so much. A lot of us have imposter syndrome. I know when I first started doing videos showing people how I'm able to farm with disabilities, it was at a time when people weren't videoing themselves, not like we are now.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember so many times going, who do you think you are? Like, who
Oh.
do you think is going to watch this? Who are you going to teach? Who's going to watch that kind of thing? Do it anyway. It's just get out there, get out of your comfort zone, and just do it. The second thing is, I know a lot of farm women, we're exactly like farm men. We don't like to ask for help.
Hmm.
And that was something that I really had to get over within myself because, I was brought up in a way that asking for help almost is like weakness.
Mm.
And that's what it felt like when I initially asked for help is I should be able to figure this out on my own. And so much time was going by, and I'm like, okay, Carrie, you're still in the same exact spot. This is not working for you. You need to find someone who knows more than you, has the
Hmm.
knowledge that can guide you. And then that's exactly where agribility came in. And that's my biggest thing is just one, you can do it no matter what. It may not look exactly the way that you think it will be, but something will come of you getting out there and just doing the thing. And then don't be afraid to ask for help because we all need it.
Absolutely. I think those of us in agriculture too, we're kind of an independent lot. And sometimes it's just humbling ourselves to ask for help, or just having that moment where you're like, okay, there's no shame in asking for help. And the thing is, people in agriculture are always so willing to reach out and to help each other. But you're right, we have to make that first step and asking when we need it.
Yes.
I think the other thing with women is often we take care of everyone else, and we put ourselves at, the end of that list. What would you tell women about self-care? And
We need to do it more. We need to put ourselves at the top of the list. And that is, I do work in the mental health in ag avenue as well. And that is one of the big statistics is that the women of the farm are taking care of everyone else's physical and mental
mhm,
health. They do not take care of their own, and they do not feel like that is reciprocated. So the whole family is used to mom taking care of everything, or, the wife taking care of all of that. That's our natural, I guess, ability that we just seem to pick up
mhm,
and do. And then we're tired or we're like, you know what, I'm doing okay. They're worse off than I am. So then we push ourselves to the back burner again. I forget the exact quote, but it goes something like you cannot continue to take care of everyone else when you are empty.
mhm,
And then that's where we end up having our breakdowns. We get so frustrated. We fly off the handle, sometimes because
mhm,
you're like, why aren't you guys paying attention? It's because we're not making people pay attention. We're
mm,
not doing what we need to do for ourselves. And a lot of that is shame and weakness too. Like, I know everybody else needs help, but we're just not looking at ourselves. And we do not need to feel ashamed to say, you know what? I need to talk to a counselor.
mhm,
Like, my family doesn't want to hear what's in my head. but somebody needs to so that I can get this off of my chest. And
Mm-hmm.
then, a lot of times a therapist or counselor, they have such good suggestions. And when you're in the emotional turmoil or the frustration of what's going on, you literally cannot think straight for yourself. So having that outside source that is not emotionally involved, oh boy, I think that that's a big ticket item that we need to look into.
Oh, yeah, I agree 100%. And it's, I think we've come a long ways. I think a lot of time in the past, a lot of people have had almost a mental block with counseling. There's been like almost a stigma against it. And it's always, I think back to, when something is going on with your body, if you feel bad, if you feel sick, you go to a doctor. And to me, a counselor or a therapist is the same thing. It's a doctor, literally, but for your health, mental health. And so I think I appreciate you also speaking to that, encouraging people to 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 think about that and to not feel any kind of shame or I guess, to make seeking out counseling or any kind of therapy, that is just part of taking care of yourself.
Yeah, yes, definitely. And you know what? I think this the pandemic, that was a silver lining within
Hmm.
the pandemic, is it did bring mental health to the surface, and not just mental health in general, mental health and ag. Like
Hmm.
we finally started talking about it, and we keep talking about it and keep talking about it so that it does break that stigma. And being involved in the AgriStress helpline through the AgriSafe
Hmm.
network, we have seen those calls come in, and we're like, it's working. The more we talk, the more people become comfortable with it. So
Right.
we just need to continue to do that.
What does resilience look like for women who are balancing farm, family, and everything in between?
I think it's basically everything we just talked about
Hmm.
is you cannot continue to care for other people when you are running on empty. Like your resilience goes down when you are just absolutely depleted
Hmm.
and you start having these thoughts like a hamster wheel thoughts, and they're not always positive when you get to that level of frustration or emptiness. So having you can't have resilience unless you're working on yourself. So I mean, it doesn't mean that you're being selfish if you say, I'm gonna have to take a minute,
Hmm.
like I've
Yes.
got to rejuvenate. So I don't know how you can be resilient if you're constantly empty. Like it's just so difficult to do that. And I have been in that spot where I
Hmm.
have felt completely depleted. And I had to push everything else to the side and go, okay, I'm not even going to be good to anyone, especially myself, unless I get myself together. And that means taking some time, doing the work, and
Hmm.
pushing that stigma away. Because boy, I grew up with a lot of shame,
Hmm.
and it transferred into my adulthood. And that a lot of rural people feel that way because it does have that stigma. Being in a small community, when you do go to the therapist office, it's hard because everybody knows the vehicle that you drive,
Right.
and well, what were you doing? Things
Hmm.
like that. So it is very difficult, but resilience is something that farm people absolutely have to have. And I believe the women of the farm even more.
I I agree. And as you sharing your story, you've gone, from a participant to an advocate. What drives you to continue to share your story?
When I had this happen to me, I scoured YouTube and I could not find anyone like me. There was not a lot of women farmers out there that were showcasing what they were doing. Like we
Hmm.
know women on the farm have always been there. It's just that we're kind of in the background. And there was absolutely no one out there, women wise, who were farming with disabilities. And I needed something so incredibly bad that I thought there's nobody out there. I'm going to have to do this myself. And it was almost like a teaching for myself, like going through what I actually do on the farm because I never really thought about it. I just did it.
Hmm.
And I'm like, there's got to be other people out there like me, And if I can share what I'm doing, maybe it will help them. And boy, it was picked up on so quickly because there aren't anybody out there sharing, the struggles of
Mm-hmm.
farming. And, we always want to show the highlight reel as everybody talks about it and the good that we do. But you kind of need to offset that a little bit because everybody does have struggles. And sometimes you think, God, that's so dumb. Like nobody else struggles with this. Why am I struggling with this? Well, I 100% guarantee you there are people out there struggling with the exact thing that you
Mm-hmm.
are. So if you are willing to put yourself out there, and now in social media, that's where everything is. You have to be willing to take the good with the bad because people they're gonna roast you
Mm.
sometimes, on social media. Um, if you're willing to put it out there and share, like the reward that I get from people saying, "My gosh, Carrie, I've never heard this from anybody before. You just gave me the will or the knowledge to be able to move forward within my life." And you sit back and you're like, "Oh my gosh, something is good that
Right.
is coming out of a crappy situation, that I've been dealt, but
Mm-hmm.
something's good is coming from it."
Yeah, that's really powerful, Carrie. And it's, a lot of times we can't see the big picture of our lives as our lives are unfolding. But that sounds to me like that's almost kind of a full circle moment,
Oh
that
yeah.
you've taken this horrible accident and the way it impacted your family and yourself. I mean, there's a lot of people that could have just gave up in that situation, but you chose to be proactive and do the work like you've said, and now seeing how you're impacting other people by sharing your story, and just inspiring so many, like myself and our listeners, I'm sure, are getting a lot out of this conversation today.
I hope so. I sure hope so.
So last question, what would you say to someone listening who is in the middle of a hard season right now?
So I'm going to tell you something that my husband used to say to me all the time, and it just kept putting it in perspective. Whatever you're going through right now in this moment, he always used to say, he's like, "Carrie, remember, this is just a moment in time."
Mm.
And I had many moments in time, throughout my recovery. And but every single time I'm like, okay, you got through the last moment. You've been
Mm-hmm.
here before. You know how this works. You know how to dig yourself out. It's just a moment in time. Things will get better. Things will move on.
Mm.
You will accept this. But I still use that to today because
Mm-hmm.
when I have flare-ups that last, a week, at the end of that week, I'm so exhausted from fighting
Mm.
the pain and
Mm-hmm.
and not being able to do anything and feeling like a failure almost because I have all these things on my task list and I didn't get a single one done because I felt like garbage. I just have to say to myself, Carrie, remember, you have to let your body rest. This is
Mm-hmm.
just a moment in time.
Mm. Wise words. I I will adopt that phrase for myself when I hit those moments that feel hard as well. So thank you for that, Carrie, and thank you so
You're so
much for
welcome.
joining us today on the Rooted and Ready podcast.
Yeah, I enjoy you guys so much. Thank you for having me.
Carrie's story reminds us that resilience isn't about returning to who we were. It's about becoming who we need to be next. It's about adapting. It's about asking for help. And sometimes it's about resting so we can keep going. Thanks for listening to Rooted and Ready from Annie's Project, where we learn, share, and grow together. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who might need it too. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. Until next time, stay rooted and ready.